manager using both. Okay, the recording started. Awesome. So I've been working in the past as an agile coach and as a project manager that was using both approaches. So I used both waterfall when the environment was calling out for that and the team needs as well, and also agile practices when there was a lot of uncertainty and we needed to deliver as fast as we could. So there was no time for a Gantt chart, and we needed to fail fast and to understand exactly what we could do. And many of my peers sometimes ask this kind of question. So is change management agile? Because it seems too prescriptive. And at first sight, it might seem that it's not. So that's the topic I would love to discuss with you today. And for us to start, I have a challenge. So I would love you to use the chat to tell us what comes to your mind when you think about change. So if someone actually goes to you and refers the word change, what comes to your mind? What do you associate with change? There's no right or wrong answers. Everything is valid at this stage. People? Yeah. Hi, Maria Laura. Happy to see you here. Change is the only constant. Oh, that's very powerful. Only one sure thing, pain, culture, and natural event. That's very beautiful. That's a very, very beautiful phrasing. Culture, work, okay. Chaos. Chaos is something very frequently associated to change. I wonder why. Not that we have been in a pandemic for the last year and a half or two, but yeah. Okay, very interesting. So now the second part of the challenge is what comes to your mind when you think about change management? Is it the same thing or is it a different kind of concept? If it's the same word, just write the same word. Organization, okay. Co-creating. Okay. Cumbersome, culture 2, risk control. Thank you, Sergio. That's also very interesting. Okay, so I don't know if you noticed the same. You can go through the chat to see the history, but the concepts are somehow the same and at the same time completely different. So when we think about change as a single event, we think about certain words or certain concepts, but when we think about change management, we think more from a management perspective as well. Sometimes from a controlled damaging perspective, and that's something I would like us to explore from now on. So it's also fair that you are doing these faces. I cannot see your faces, unfortunately. I would love this to be in a in-person kind of environment where we could all see each other. Oh, there's people turning off the camera, turning on the camera. That's so kind. Thank you. So it's completely fair that you would do this kind of face right now and believe isn't change and change management the same thing, because many times we mix the concepts and we believe they are all the same. And fun fact, it's not. So they are different things. So just to start a baseline before we discuss if this is agile or not, and because I'm not aware if all of you have some knowledge upfront regarding change management. So what change is basically movement. Change is a state where you are moving from point A to point B. That's that movement, that's that transition. So you can see here, you can be living in the current state, which is today, and the future state, which is point B. This is a change that's going to happen. For you to move from A to B, that's a change. If you think from an enterprise or corporate or organizational perspective from your companies, some examples you can take into consideration are these ones that you can see in your screen right now. For example, moving from 2 completely separate companies to just one. So merging 2 companies into one is a change by itself. It's a movement. It's something that's being transformed. Simultaneously, if you consider the change management part, it's about supporting the people that will be impacted by that change. So it's something quite delicate because not everyone goes through the same process, not everyone goes through the same kind of feelings, sentiments, and not everyone can adapt to change as easily. And the change management practices focus the practice itself on managing this transition and providing the right environment and the right tools for people to embrace change and to actually embrace this future state as an opportunity. So this is the difference. if we take a look into the current state and the future state, what change management ends up doing is managing transition from a twofold perspective. So we have the people side, which is where we need to work together with the people involved and the people impacted by the change to make sure that they embrace the change and that they feel comfortable embracing this. Sometimes change is uncertain and people don't know what to expect. So we need to alleviate this feeling, the negative feeling towards uncertainty. And that's something that is taken care of by the change management practice. Also the adoption, because the whole purpose of moving from A to B is not to revert to A again. There might be a purpose. There's for sure some reasoning sustaining this need for change. And also using the change itself. So we don't want just to change things for the sake of doing it. We want it to be useful for the people involved and for the people impacted by the change. At the same time, and this is the concept that's usually a bit more known to everyone, which is more related to the project management also side of things, it's the technical side. It's where we design a solution to move from A to B, is where we develop the solution itself, and then it's when we deliver the change and make sure it happens. So let's just pick up a very practical example because it's very easy to talk about theory when you have read a lot of books and you do this in your job, but not everyone have seen this in practice. So it's only fair that we bring some examples to the table. This is a very simple one. Imagine that today you are a professional, you are based in Lisbon, for example, and you live there with your family, with your husband, with your kids, and you are also working from there, and you just received this absolutely amazing job offer. You accept it, and it's a fact that's going to be a change in your life. So you are now going to move to Berlin and starting to live and work from there. This is the change. If you need to manage this, because again, not everyone is going to feel the same sentiment around this change. Maybe I myself, I'm quite happy and I see this as an opportunity, but maybe my husband thinks this might be a threat. I'm going to a new job, so I have this kind of certainty that I won't be unemployed. But will we feel the same way? Will we feel that this change is actually a benefit for our household? Will we feel that this is something positive for the relationship and for the family? So what we need to do to make this transition a good one and to make it suitable is to take care of the people side of things. So we need to work on a way to embrace this new culture, because we need to be clear. All countries are different from each other, and that's beautiful, but that also requires a lot of agility to handle that transition. We cannot expect that in a different country all the rules are going to be the same, or the social norms are going to be the same, and even the lifestyle is going to be the same. So there will need to be this development to embrace this new culture in Berlin that you would be facing. Also, adopting a curious attitude could help a lot for you to adopt the change itself. If you are curious, if you actually move to Berlin and have this attitude of trying to get to know more about the other people, why things are done in a certain way, this might help with the transition. And last but not least, on the people side, using this change as an opportunity, not as a threat. Using accountability and being accountable for selecting this change. You were the one accepting the offer. You were the one owning this decision. And now you should use this opportunity to grow as a person, to grow as a professional, and to develop a growth mindset as well. Simultaneously, because life happens and nobody takes care of the technical parts for us, we need to also design at the same time the moving process. Are we going to leave the apartment the end of this month? Do we need to warn our landlord? Do we need to find an apartment in the new city in the next month, for example? The development part, which is actually moving your belongings, deciding if you are willing to take all of your belongings with you or not, or maybe find some storage place. And last but not least, the delivery here in this scenario, we can consider the first day where you are starting the new job in Berlin, already living in a new house in a new city. So this is a very simple example. I'm sure that some of you have probably moved from one place to another. It's a heavy experience because sometimes we believe it's going to be very easy, all exciting, and we don't consider the differences in social norms and also the culture. And one thing that we can also discuss, this is a very long and detailed slide. I hate putting a lot of text in slides, but this one was on purpose, I promise. it's an example from an organizational management perspective, because we also need to apply change management in companies. And sometimes this is not an easy process. This change, the change that we are giving here as an example, is a scenario where we are, can everyone mute, please? I think I'm hearing some background noise, sorry. The change we have right here as an example, and this is not limited to, it's really just an example, is, for example, a team of 50 people that right now is not used to have standardized processes, and they just do ad hoc processes when necessary. They build a process here and there, they don't do things all the same way, there's no quality standard or anything else. The change management right here will be for this team of 50 people to embrace an execution that will be done differently. So from a certain date on, let's say the 1st of December, they will start using documented and standardized processes. And this takes some adaptation. This takes some time to involve the people, to tell them why this change is important, to get their feedback, to understand if they see the value in this change as well. And this is sometimes a lengthy process. Some other times it's a bit quicker. But if we take a look, so this could be an example of what this change management process could be. Absolutely, we would need to start with clarifying the current and the future state, which right now it's pretty straightforward. So we are moving from a scenario where these teams do not have any documented processes, so everyone is doing the things as they want to, and they will be moving to more of a teamwork collaboration to make sure they have some standards. We need to identify a sponsor. A leadership position is always wanted because you want to have someone that has a high influence in the company as well, that can sponsor and vouch for this change success. After that, you can consider assessing the change impact and also the risk. So who is going to be impacted for good? Is it just the 50 people? Is it also the managers? Is it also another team that's right now receiving the product of the work that these 50 people are doing? So we need to run that assessment and do a stakeholder mapping. Then we should define what's the urgency and how long this change will take. As I mentioned in the beginning, so business needs have different kind of demands. And in some businesses, or if the business is super stable and the change itself can take quite some time, in some other businesses, you need to make change happen in 2 days. So maybe having this super detailed step-by-step is not the ideal scenario, but then if that's the case, the decision is taken and we live also with the consequences. So we need to manage the change the best way possible to ensure people do not feel negatively impacted by the new future state. So we would need to connect with the stakeholders. So involving people is really a great part of the change management practice. Keeping people up to date, explaining why this is important, collecting their feedback and iterating. Now coming to Agile terminology, we need to iterate, we need to build feedback loops for people to be involved in this change too. We need to map in this scenario specifically, what are the current processes that need to be changed, and maybe do an MVP. We can prioritize, we don't need to change everything all at the same time. We can start with the pilot, for example, just change one process, see how the team reacts, and then start adapting the other ones. And if you go through the rest of the list, one thing I would really like to highlight is something that sometimes companies fail quite hard. We don't explain why the change is necessary. We simply enforce change. And that's something that Agile has taught us. If you consider the principles, the values, people over process. So by the end of the day, you need to consider the people that will be impacted by this change, get their buy-in, get their enthusiasm, and make this something appealing for them. Show them the benefits and making them part of the change itself. Make them champions, involve them in building the change. Why not? They don't need to just be people executing the tasks. They can be the ones involved in building the change as well. So the list is quite long, and this is just an example. So you can do this in different manners, of course. But based on this, the feedback I have from a lot of coworkers is that change management could never be agile. It's impossible. This seems like a super prescriptive kind of thing. It seems like waterfall to me. So there's no way this could be agile. There's a lot of lists and checklists for me to follow. So just out of curiosity and my perspective, yes, it is agile. So change management is absolutely connected to the Agile Manifesto. If you know the principles, if you know the values, if you know the practices, Change management is highly connected to Agile. In one hand, on the people side that I mentioned before, the Agile mindset and principles, you can absolutely reflect about them. We mention individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? That's what the people side of things in the change management practice puts as a priority. We can't neglect the people that will be affected by the change. You can absolutely make a change in your company without considering the people, and the change is going to be completed for sure. But what's the impact of that? Are you going to just lose people that are working in your company? Are you willing to take that risk, or do you want to involve them and also listen to their feedback and input? Also, reacting to change over following the plan. So this one is quite straightforward. Change management embraces all the change that's necessary to adopt a growth mindset. We need to think about the future state as a state where we will be learning new things. We will be more prepared to the future. We will be even more ready to a change of to a place of uncertainty. We will start seeing uncertainty as an opportunity to build a new path, to build something that's meaningful for us and for the people that we are working with or living with and having a meaningful life with. At the same time, on the technical side, there's no guide and no one prescribing you to develop this plan to implement change in a waterfall manner. It's completely up to you. So it's up to the person that's dealing this part of the change management to see what fits best the environment, what fits best the change needs, and the people impacted by that change. If it's something that's really, really, for example, a legal request, or something that requires an audit, then probably you won't have that much margin to fail during the iterations. So you need to be quite careful with the approach. But many other times you can absolutely create a backlog, prioritize what are the things that will bring the best value and the best impact first, involve the people in it, and iterate again. That's what's going to make your change sustainable. You can absolutely use Scrum to implement a change. Nothing prevents you from that. So yes, in my perspective, change management and Agile go hand in hand. And I think we can take a lot of learnings from this as well. Now let's talk about something which is also very hot at the moment. Theory and practice are usually not the same thing. So what we read in books, what we talk about with our co-workers, what we see in webinars and something like that, then we go back to our daily jobs and it's like, it's not that what I'm observing on a day-to-day basis. So how far away is the theory from the reality? And I believe that we mentioned in the event invitation that we would be covering COVID impact in change management. So that's what we are going to approach right now. I want you please to go back to the chat and to let us know if your company has provided training on remote work practices when COVID started. A yes or no answer is acceptable. Okay, no. Okay, 50-50 so far. Partially, okay. Okay, yes. It's equally distributed. If somebody else writes partially, I think that we have an equal distribution. Okay, 50-50. So this is one of the things. When COVID started, this was a major change. Some companies had to completely reinvent themselves overnight. Otherwise, the business wouldn't survive in a quarter. I don't know if you were up to date on the news, but there were a lot of studies showing how much a business could basically survive or not based on the cash inflow they had available by that time. Some companies did not have the margin to start with training and then performing in a remote work. So overnight, they had to send their people home and hopefully hope for the operations to continue as smooth as possible for the business to continue as well. And this was many times neglected. So some companies forgot that not all employees knew how to work in remote work practices. Training is fundamental for a change to be successful. You should never assume that people are always ready for all the change that's coming. It's also our responsibility to come forward and say, look, I've never worked remotely. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm stuck at home. I have 3 kids. I can't focus and I can't do my job. So we cannot only expect our employers to provide the training, but it's also our accountability and our responsibility to come forward and say, I need support to handle this change. Another example, and let's use the chat again. Did your company provide resources to equip your house as an office? Yes or no? Resources can be budget or the company sending you the materials for you to use at home. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. No. Anyone else wants to participate? Okay. I see the majority of the answers we have so far point to yes. I understand as well, and we need to be quite careful with the approach. We shouldn't generalize, or at least we should try to avoid creating these stereotypes. Some roles, in some roles and in some businesses, it might not be possible to provide this kind of resources. If you work in a startup that I don't know, started the business 1 month ago, maybe there's no budget to offer on that scenario, or maybe you are an independent employee, and in that case it should be up to you to be equipped, unless you have an agreement with your employer to be equipped to do the job from your place or from someplace else. But this is also quite related to change management. So we were used to being in an office with monitors and quite fancy technology and spending time with our peers. In my case, I missed the coffee. I started having to buy a lot of coffee for my house because I was used to being in the office and having coffee for the entire day. That was super cool. And suddenly my husband and I, we were both working from home. And when we noticed, we were just ordering 10 boxes of coffee every now and then to survive this, because we were used to have that benefit in the office itself. Now, I'm not saying companies should have been paying for your coffee. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's part of also the company's responsibility to make sure that you have the resources necessary to perform your job, to make sure that you have the right support to have internet service. Maybe you didn't have internet service before in your place, and that's something that needs to be assessed from a change management perspective. One more. Did your company promote any kind of mental health support? It can be webinars, could be psychologist sessions sponsored somehow, coaching sessions as well. Okay, 2 yeses, 3. Okay. Don't need it, but yes. Nice, Sergio. No, it's okay. So as I said in the beginning, there's no right or wrong answers. We are just trying, first of all, to empathize. We all come from different backgrounds, different companies, different realities, and things in change management do not go according to a book where it's equal in all companies or in all scenarios. Providing mental health support from, for example, a psychologist office kind of hours, that might be a luxury that some companies cannot afford to provide. But they can equip the people managers to understand the importance of the well-being in productivity. They can equip and coach the people managers to provide all the resources necessary to ensure people are not working from 8 a.m. to 12 or something like that. And this is another way to get there. One thing we should always assess is the impact everything takes on people, and COVID absolutely affected our mental health. We started to be at home, and in the beginning it was fun. It was like, well, remote work, this sounds super cool, but then you couldn't go to the gym. You couldn't see your family and friends. And this has a toll on people psychologically speaking. So, and it's the same thing. If you believed you couldn't perform well, if you believe you needed help, it's also your job to come forward and say to your manager or to your HR department, hey, I feel I'm not equipped and I need support to handle this change. And now this is the final one. I admit this is the one I'm most curious about. Did your company adapt the operations to the new reality? So did your company hire more people, maybe to cover operations 24/7? Did the company assess exactly the impact in your team's productivity? 2 yeses. Okay. I think this one is very balanced. Company already operated 24/7. Yeah, So some companies already did that. So for them, it was not that big of a change, but for some other companies, the ones that could still expand the business during COVID, because it's not just bad news, some companies and some businesses and industries actually managed to grow during this period. They had to adapt the operations because they needed suddenly to cover customer support to a 24/7 business model, and they needed to hire across the globe. And adapting the operations also means being available to offer a job that's fully remote from now on. We know that in social media, there's a lot of discussion about, should we now get back to the office? We are way more productive at home. This is the kind of adaptation that companies need to consider when facing change, when the change itself is also quite significant. So in the COVID scenario, and bear in mind, this is something that I observed, I talked with peers, I talked with people from other companies, I've spoke with a lot of people to get this information for you. This is a compilation of it. In the scenario of COVID, where we were working co-located in an office, which was a sharing environment, sorry, at least the majority of us, we had to move fast and unexpectedly to a scenario of isolation, where we were working from home overnight. It was a governmental guideline in most of the countries, so we had to move completely to work from home. And what we observed was the kind of survival mode in companies, which is absolutely necessary to keep a business running. So the technical side of change management in most companies was absolutely addressed. The companies adapted to closing the offices and making sure people were safe and at home, making sure they were actually supporting people to stay healthy. So that was done immediately. It was a priority. Operations were up and running. So checking if we had enough staffing to deliver our services, goods, or products. And last but not least, constantly monitoring the impact of COVID in a global economy, because one out of the seven, almost all companies had a negative impact associated to this pandemic, and this became a priority, hence on the technical side. What it's very easy sometimes to neglect, and by all means, I'm not saying this happens all the time, is the people side of things. We usually assume that people will be ready no matter what, no matter the impact that the change is going to take on them. And we forget the agility, and we forget the people and the conversations and involving the people in it. So sometimes we forget to provide training. As I said, that's why I asked you about the remote work training. Some companies completely forgot about that, and some of the people struggled a lot to find ways of working from home, and that's complicated to manage. Another thing is extending mental health support. Some managers or people managers were not equipped to deal with something like this as such a significant change. They didn't know how to coach their teams to go through this difficult time. Also adapting the work resources, having the laptops, the monitors, everything for people to be able to be productive and happy, and also the coaching and training part. And just as a final note before we go into Q&A, this is an overview of the change management leadership style proposed by the Henderson Institute of Research. This is a leadership style that focuses on three different parts. One is the head, the other is the hands, and the other is the heart. And the head focuses, can we please mute, please? I don't know if anyone is not mute. Thank you. The head one focus on identifying priorities based on what matters the most. It's a goal-oriented kind of mindset, so always focusing on the results that need to be achieved for the business to survive. And usually people with this kind of approach, the ones that embrace the head approach the most, are strategic thinkers. They think about the strategy to keep the business alive, to have success, to be the top market leader, and everything else, which is fundamental. The hands approach is where people that focus the most on this leadership style, they excel at planning and execution. They are the ones making stuff happen. They are the ones making sure that that strategic vision is being implemented in a way that's in a timely manner. Also, they think a lot in a tactical manner, and they do all the work needed to deliver. And usually they remove obstacles to achieve goals. Last but not least, and as important as the other two, we have the heart approach. many times associated with agile coaches, which is a role I'm very fond of because I was also an agile coach in my previous life. So the heart is very connected to purpose and values, to making sure the team and the teams feel heard, they feel involved, they feel they have a belonging, they feel they belong to a group and to a mission. Recognizing progress and not just results. So it's not, the focus is not just in achieving something, is also what we learn to get there. And last but not least, inspiring and empowering the teams to always feel that they can achieve something. So the three leadership styles are absolutely amazing for us to have. The difficulty is to have a balanced approach. There's this trend to usually just select one and absolutely neglect the other two. And what this Institute of Research noticed is that when facing change management needs, the majority of the leaders actually focus on the head approach. They neglect the other two. The second preferred approach is the hands approach, making things happen in times of crisis. And the least one, the one that's actually not so preferable to this target audience, to the leadership audiences, is the heart approach, where people actually need to be part of the priorities, heard, motivated, and feeling part of something. So this is a lot of food for thought. And if you are working in the agile world, I'm absolutely sure that you prioritize people as well, that you want to involve them in building value. Change management does that too, because by the end of the day, we are building value to our people, to our businesses, and we cannot do anything if our teams are not feeling empowered, autonomous, and prepared to handle the uncertainty that's coming with these times of change. And yes, this was the last slide. I've been doing this monologue for quite some time, although your participation in the chat. I think we can open the Q&A. Adilson, if anyone would like to ask questions, I'm more than happy to try to answer them. And yeah, that's it on my side.
Thank you, Anna. I have a question. I would like to start. At the beginning, and the very first beginning, the first slides, I saw that an example of change management could be like something like put a project or a product in production, or distribute a product on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And what comes to my mind is that this kind of change management also already has some own rules, and is done by the market, like product launch. It's a change, but it's a change like with a label already, because it's not a generic type of change management. It's kind of specific kind of change management. Is something that I realized? Is that something correct to think about it? What do you think about it? This kind of changes that we already know by other names.
It's true. You will find a lot of literature. I think we are quite fortunate to have access to internet these days, because we don't lack at all information to explore. The thing is, we need to always find what's more suitable to our own needs and environments, right? We can't just take a template from something we found at Google and hope to succeed. Introducing a new product to the market is not as simple as sometimes these kind of blog posts paint. It's not just about developing the product. Do you have the people to actually focus on that product? Will you need to bring people that are already working in a different product line and adapt their mindset to the new vision of a new product? Will you need to build a new team? Will you need to build some values, some foundations for the team to trust each other, to feel they are in a safe space to actually fail and to produce and to adopt the agile mindset? Maybe since it's a new product, we will be working with Scrum. So that's a good example. But for the other products, the operations are so stable that you are just using a Kanban approach. Does that team and those members know the difference between Kanban and Scrum? This is change management too. So assessing the entire organizational change needs to be something done from within. Of course, you can go online, you can study all the resources you want, but by the end of the day, it helps a lot having specialists or change managers that can support you with the best approach that fits the environments. A little bit like agile coaches. Agile coaches support the organization to drive the knowledge on Agile, to adapt the right mindset, to seek what are the best solutions. Change managers do the same on this regard.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions? I don't bite, so.
Thank you for the session. More than a question, probably a comment. So when you talk about habits and heart, I find it sometimes even based on the region and the culture, we might have differences. And currently at our company, we are facing that challenge where the Portuguese way is more of a hard way, try to embrace the teams, the teams or the people actually say that what they would like to have. And we have other people that no, just go for it, just do it, top to bottom approach. So this is also a big challenge in the way that we address change management, because one usually is a faster way to put things out there, but we create a resistance so big that in the midterm it might create issues because of it. Care to comment?
Yeah, absolutely agree. And that happens most frequently when you have multiple cultures, when you have people from all over the globe. We have different cultures, and the first step is to admit that we are different. If we believe that we are all going to adopt change the same way, that's one mistake. So we need to be prepared to check for our own biases as well, and to understand if we are willing to embrace the change or not. If the answer is no, the answer is completely acceptable, but then we also need to understand what that means for us. Let's give a practical example. If now I was hired to do a job, I joined the company and the job is one completely different. It's my responsibility to understand if I want to embrace that change or if I want to say, no, that's not what I want to do for my career, and I will accept the consequences for not embracing the change. It's not bad or it's not good, it's just a decision that you take. When you are in a company with such different profiles and different cultures, absolutely we need to start with cultural training. So we need to start building this awareness that not everyone thinks the same way, and that should be respected by the end of the day. And we need to meet halfway. So we can't push to go either changing overnight every day or to take 1 year to change completely. That's not sustainable for the company. So there needs to be means and strategies put in place, which include training, which include preparing the mindset for the change. That's the first part. It's setting up the baseline so that you can actually implement the change itself, assess the impact, and iterate again. Does that make sense, Sergio? It was also a comment on my side more than a elaborate answer.
It does, but that takes even that takes time, and sometimes we need to rush things. So yeah, it's a trade-off, a big trade-off.
Absolutely. That's why also company culture. Now I'm not talking about country's culture, but company culture. It's so important. Company cultures these days need to be equipping everyone to be able to deal with difficult change and change that sometimes need to happen in 2 days and not in the preferable kind of way where we take 1 year to actually train everyone and then do one step. Sometimes that's just not possible, and it causes frustration, which is okay, but we need to create a safe space for people feeling frustrated to talk about that, to actually assume they are feeling frustrated and to understand the why. Is that frustration coming from because they don't accept the change itself? Is it because they don't understand the why the change is important? Is it because they don't see benefit in it at all? So that's the kind of sentiments that we need to explore when a change is taking place and it's fast and unexpected.
Anna, we have a question in the chat. Yeah. It's related with decision makers. Is something like related to the culture issue. What do you do to handle senior leadership? And then how to get the buy-in from skeptical key decision makers?
I think that's the hardest question of all. I need to be really honest into this because, so first we need to acknowledge that I want to ask a question before I give an answer. How many companies do you know that actually have the change management practice? that have like a change management specialist or someone that understands what that means and that realizes that's a priority in the company. How many companies have you seen doing that? Just like a guess estimate, I don't know. Actually, one. Okay, two. I was not expecting like 20. So I think the low numbers speak for themselves. What happens mostly is that sometimes change management is believed as to be the same as project management. So what companies do is that they hire project managers to handle an implementation of change. And project managers are equipped to design the solution, but they are not equipped in the beginning to actually measure the impact on people and to psychologically prepare people for the change, to coach them and to guide them. Many companies don't realize the benefit that it is to assume change management as a priority and to hire people that are specialists in that area to help guiding through that process. Same happens in Agile. So how many companies do you know that are doing Scrum because they are doing a daily stand-up or something and they say that they are doing Scrum and never hired an Agile coach or an actual Scrum Master? I bet you know a lot of companies that do that. It's the exact same thing. So when it comes to leadership, it starts exactly there. When you have a leadership team that assumes change management has a significant impact and it needs to be a priority, it starts with them to spot they need to open a vacancy or 2 or 10 for people that understand that topic and that can help transforming the organization up to a future state that makes sense for the company and for the people involved in it. So it starts with leaders. I need to be honest, like everyone else, sometimes leaders want to change, sometimes leaders don't want to change, but also individual contributors. So it's not just about leadership. How many co-workers do you have that are not people managers, but that refuse to change for good? You give them feedback and you say, look, you could have told me something beforehand, and now we have our teamwork completely ruined because you didn't speak up front, and they just say, I don't care for your opinion. So we should sometimes resist this kind of willingness to put the blame in leadership, because everyone is people within a company. It's not just the leaders. Everyone resists to change. If you know the basics of neuroscience, we as humans don't appreciate change. We like stability. So if someone presents a change to us, the first reaction we might take is like, what the hell? I don't want to do this. Why am I involved in this change? I don't want to be part of this. And leaders sometimes struggle with assuming this as well. So it's a tricky question. I believe one of the steps is to provide leadership coaching that includes the development of a growth mindset and the preparation to sometimes take a step back and not implement all the change overnight and give it time, solidify the impact, and prepare the people to handle the change. I don't know if this answered, but it was the best I could come up with such a difficult question. Thank you so much for that. Okay, any final question? I think we have just 5 minutes left.
Yep. No? Okay.
Okay, I think I can make a disclaimer. If you have any questions or specific use cases that you are facing and you wouldn't like to discuss them publicly, this is a safe space by the end of the day, but you might not feel comfortable with bringing up the topic, I'm available on LinkedIn. If you would like to exchange a few ideas, I'm more than happy to do so. I'm all for learning development, so I also learn a lot from other people's experiences. If you have anything you would like to share, even a frustration or a concern regarding change that you are going through, please feel free to share with me as well.
Amazing. And I just would like to thank you a lot for the so valuable information you brought to us today. Of course, I could easily stay here asking you a lot of questions because it's a subject that I don't know, but we are so involved in changes, especially now, that this subject is very interesting, at least for me and for other people also. So I would like to thank you a lot, and just ask you everybody to provide us feedback using the link that I'm sharing again in the chat, and say that thank you all for being here with us.
Thank you, everyone. It was really lovely to see you spending some time with us. Thank you for being that kind. Have a lovely week.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.